Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode. So today is the day we're going to talk about Shadow Priests. And I know a lot of you have been waited and anticipated for the Shadow Priest guide. And I mean, Shadow Priest is a special spec. It's a spec from Blizzard that get nerfed, it gets buffed, it gets nerfs, you know. If you're a Shadow Priest, you have to be loyal for the Shadow Priest. And if you've been playing Shadow Priest for a long time, I mean, it's pretty cool by you because it's a spec that you need to be loyal to. Because sometimes they're trash, sometimes they're good, and sometimes they're trash. I guess in most cases they're trash, but also good. I think right now they are in a pretty good state, I would say. So let's go through this guide where you will learn how to play Shadow Priest, and I will make sure that you will learn all the basics of Shadow Priest and how you can play the spec without having problems. I'm not saying you're going to get pro or you're going to be professional from this guide. I'm just learning you the standards of how you play Shadow Priest, and then you can take my guide as positive things and probably you will begin be pro after this video. You can also leave from here without knowing anything, but I mean, no, that's not true, but you know what I mean. After this guide here, you will exactly know what Shadow Priest is about and how you play it, and then it's up to you how you will evolve after that. So let's get the list. So this is the 5 things we're going to cover in this Shadow Priest guide. First of all, changes, stats, Azerite, talents, rotations. These 5 topics we're going to cover in this video. So first of all, changes is from 8.0 to 8.1. Stats is which stats do you need for your class. Azerite, what outer ring and middle ring Azerites is the best for Shadow Priest. Talents, which talent should I use for dungeons, raids, or maybe just trash mobs or bosses. And rotation is, I mean, for Shadow Priest it's pretty simple, but I'm going through the rotation, and also we will go through the tips and tricks on how I play Shadow Priest. So before we go into that, I just wanted to remind you that I'm doing guides for pretty much every class that I normally play in in World of Warcraft. So keep in mind that I already made guides for different other classes. As you can see here, I already made for Enhancement Shaman, Elemental Shamans, Retribution Paladin, and Restoration Shaman for 8.1. Poof! This is a Nintendo Switch. So yeah, go and watch them if you haven't seen them before. I mean, if you play one of these classes, it will definitely help you out. Enough with that, Nintendo. So let's go directly into it. Let's go into the changes. Poof. So I have 3 pages of changes. So if you think that Shadow Priestess has got a lot of changes, they have got so many changes. So first of all, the insanity drain per second has been reduced by 15. Keep in mind, this is a buff. It now drains starting at 6 insanity per second and increases by additional 0.68 insanity every second. That means you will be allowed to be in void form for longer time. Equal means on bosses you will deal more damage. The spell damage bonus from void form grants is now up 20, up from 10. That means you will also deal more damage in void form and you will stay longer in void form. That is pretty great. Void Ball now generates 20 insanity per cast, up from 16 insanity. That allows you to stay in void form for longer. Wow, such a lot of buffs in this game. Dispersion now reduces all damage you take by 75, up from 60. Dispersion now also grants you a 50 movement speed while it's active. Mania has been removed. It was a talent that increased your movement speed depending on how much insanity you had, but that's removed. But we got this one here. Intangibility Intangibility is now a new talent that has taken the place of Mania in the talent tree. Intangibility reduces the cooldown of dispersion by 30 seconds and causes the dispersion to heal you for 50 of your maximum health over its duration. For the next one, boom, boom, boom. Shadow form no longer reduces your physical damage taken by 10. And now you probably say, oh, that is sad. Well, instead, Shadow is getting Focused Will as a baseline passive ability, which causes melee abilities and attacks to reduce all damage you take by 15 for 8 seconds. So, as you heard, it reduces all damage you take by 15. So that means it's not melee damage you only reduce now. It's actually all damage by 15. So, which cause melee abilities and attacks to reduce. So basically that's a buff. It's not even more. It's not anymore physical damage. It's all damage. So that's a kind of big buff. Hallucination is a new baseline passive ability that grants you 6 insanity on successfully dispel magic, mass dispel, purify disease, vampiric embrace, and powered shield cast. So if you probably think now, why are we getting this change? Well, it is actually because people were complaining about every time you had to use one of these spells, you're losing insanity, for example, inside a void form. But now you actually gets insanity while using these spells. That means, well, you can use them now without thinking about, oh, I don't get insanity for this. But you do now. You do. Lingering insanity now fades every 30 seconds, up from every 2 seconds. That is a buff. The cooldown on Surrender to Madness has been reduced to 3 minutes, and the penalty that stops you from generating any insanity has been reduced to 15 seconds, down from 30 seconds. I mean, that is also a buff. I mean, no one is really using Surrender to Madness, so I don't really think that's a big change. Void Torrent now generates 30 insanity over its duration, and it no longer requires Void Form in order to cast it. Its damage has also been increased by 20. Mind Bomb and Physical Scream now take 40% longer to break from damage. Legacy of the Void now also increased the spell damage damage bonus of Void Form by an additional 5%. So that's your talent. That's your level 110 talents. That is now better, isn't it? Yeah. The damage of Mind Seer has been increased by 20%. Yeah, I mean that's a buff. So that was the changes. So all the changes that Shadow Priest got from 8.0 to 8.1. I hope you can live with my little failure about PvP talents. That just shows that I haven't really played much PvP in this patch yet. But I hope you're still with me. So then we have the stats. And now you're probably thinking, I know the stats, but no you don't. You don't know the stats. Let me show you the stats. First of all, intellect. And now you will say, but Mr. Dvalin, we always get intellect on all our gear, so what is the point of mentioning intellect? But, a little guy, you don't know, because if you get a trinket, and it either have haste or intellect, and it's the same eye level, which one do you pick? You take the intellect one. Intellect is your main stat, it's the most important one, and you take it no matter what. You would only take the trinket with haste if it's 5 to 10 eye level higher than your than your intellect trinket. So intellect is like the major thing to take. But it's pretty easy. You have intellect on all your gear except for your trinkets, so that's the only one you have to think about. After that, haste and critical strike are both equal. Haste, of course, makes all your damage over time abilities that you're pretty much reliable on faster, you get lower cooldown on some of your spells, and you get a faster cast time and insanity generation. So haste is like the most important thing for you, because faster insanity generation, faster damage over time spells, faster cast time, and well, it's just so good haste. You just need that haste. But critical strike is also very important because let me show you here in game. You have this one here called shadowy apparitions. When your shadow void pain damage over time critical strikes, you also create a shadowy version of yourself that flows towards your target and deals 1000 damage. That means critical strike is important, because every time it crits, it deals additional damage. It creates, you know, this shadowy form that flows through the enemy and deals a lot of damage. So haste and critical strike are both equal strong. So intellect first, haste and critical strike as number 2. Then we have mastery as number 3, and versatility as number 4. So versatility is like the last one you want to get. Mastery is also, you know, mastery and versatility is like, okay, these two last we need. So if you have already maybe crit and critical strike, haste or critical strike on the gear, well, you can choose mastery or versatility. But again, intellect, haste, critical strike is just so important for Shadow Priestess. Yep. So that is the message. Then it was the changes, the stats, and now it is the Azerite traits. Switch cam. Thank you. First of all, we're going to talk about the outer ring. So the best Azerite trait you can get in overall for the outer ring is Churros of Insanity. When Void Form ends, gain 14 critical strike for each stack of Void Form. This effect decays every 1 second. And you know what I said, we like critical strike, so that's why this one here is the best and the best. It's just the best at the best. Best. If you cannot get this one here, see if you can get Spiteful Apparitions. Shadowy Apparitions deal an additional 140 damage to enemies suffering from your vampiric touch. So again, it just makes your Shadowy Apparitions stronger. I mean, it's pretty great. So these two Azerite traits, see if you can get one of them, and of course take Churros. That's most important. You will never find an item where they both are on, but Churros of Insanity is still best if you can choose between 2 items. And from the outer ring, we have the middle ring. Overwhelming Power is the best one, as because it gives you applications, 25 applications, where each of these applications actually give 11 haste. And it decays 1 stack every second. Keep in mind, it also decays faster if you actually take damage, so try to avoid taking damage as much as possible. But Heed My Call is number 2, as sometimes when you deal damage, you will deal 368 damage, scaling depending on eye level, and it also deals damage to all the enemies around it for the next 3 yards. So Overwhelming Power is the best one, and Heed My Call is number 2 for the middle ring. So that was pretty much the changes from 8 to 8.1, the stats you need, the Azerite traits I recommend for the best, and then we have the talents. Let's switch cam again. Here we go. So here we have the talents. Let's go through the first row. Shadow Void Pain is like the talent I would recommend for any situation. It makes the gameplay and just the rotation of your spells and gameplay fun much more reliable. Normally when you enter Void form, your what is called Mind Blast and your Void Blast normally goes off on same cooldown, and it kind of makes your gameplay sometimes feel annoying. But if you don't like Shadow Void, Fortress of the Mind is the number 2 best. It can really also carry your damage if you are in a situation where you can stand still all the time. So it's really relying on that you have to stand still and not moving around at all. That's why Shadow Void is the best overall, because it doesn't require you to stand still as much. It just makes your rotation much smoother. So I would say Shadow Void, take that as a number 1 always. Number 2, I would recommend taking Body and Soul. It increases your movement, but if you are on a boss where you don't really need any movement, you can take Integrity for self healing or Sandline for helping your team with the healing you get from Vampiric Embrace. But else, just stick with Body and Soul and you're good to go with the, we can say, the movement speed. On the next row, all the free spells here can really be good, but they are very situation reliable. Twist of Fate is the best for single targeting and executable damage. That means when the boss gets below 35 health, you deal 10% more damage and healing, and that means if you need some more damage to be the top damage on the boss, you just need that 10%. Well, when he gets under 35, you get 10% more damage, and boom, you will be number 1 damage. So Twist of Fate is really a good one on single target boss fights, or if you know you're going into a dungeon where the mobs is going to die a lot, and it will go for under 35%, and then you also get the damage boost. But I would still say it's the best one for single targets. Misery is the best one for situations where you have a lot of trash mobs or a lot of cleave bosses where they are spread out. So you cannot use Mind Shear or anything that kind of creates your normal cleave damage. So Misery just helps you just putting out your dots to a lot of mobs that is spread out around the world. Dark Void is the best for I would say probably dungeon runs and so on. If you have a lot of trash mobs that is assembled together in the same position, so you have a lot of trash mobs in the same position, because it deals a lot of damage and it gives Shadow Wave Pain to all the enemies it actually hits. So for a lot of trash mobs and fast pulling groups, probably Dark Void is the best one if you want to be top damage on the trash mobs. If you want to be top damage on the boss, Twist of Fate is the best one, and Misery is for making your rotation easier and helping you on spread damage on, you could say, spread cliff. But again, if you don't take Misery, you can simply just use Vampiric Touch and Shadow Wave Pain by yourself, instead of Vampiric Touch automatically puts Shadow Wave Pain for you. So it's not that loose to not take Misery. So Twist of Fate and Dark Void is probably the best ones, but Twist of Fate, single target, Dark Void, multiple targets. Boom. For the next row, you can either take Last Word, that will reduce the cooldown of your silence, or you can take Physic Horror, that will give you an extra stun. I would normally say Physic Horror because then you get a free stun, and I also have a silence. But it can also be nice to have a Last Word if, it reduces the cooldown of your silence and makes your silence more reliable. And if you already have a lot of your groups that already have stun, then it could be nice to have a more frequent silence. On the next row, again, we actually have a very situation talent row. Auspicious Spirits is a really nice one and can really deal a lot of damage, but it has a requirement. They normally say that you need to have 18% of critical strike, because you have this one here, Shadowy Apparition, that the more crit you have, the more times it will spawn these shadows. And people say that before taking this talent, Suspicious Spirits, you should have at least 18% critical strike. If you don't have that, it's not really a talent that is worth thinking about. Shadow Crash is like the talent. It has a low cooldown, it deals a lot of damage and generates a lot of insanity. So Shadow Crash is a pretty popular talent by a lot of persons. But again, Shadow Crash also gives you additional spell, and Auspicious Spirits don't really give you any other spells. It just makes your Zero Appearance to increase the damage, and it generates insanity. But if you don't have much crit, then this one here will not really be useful. But again, it makes your rotation easier because you don't have to think about it. So if you want an easy rotation, take Auspicious Spirits. If you don't have to crit the best damage, I would say Shadow Crash, because it deals a lot of damage on trash mobs, bosses, and AoE. But again, as Twist of Fate with single target damaging, if you need that more damage on bosses, because it deals 7,000 damage on a target that is under 20% health. It has 2 charges, so that means if you need more execute damage, so again, your friend, he has like 2% more damage than you, and you just need that extra execute damage, then Shadow Weight Death is helping you a lot to get that more damage after the boss comes below 20% health. But Shadow Weight Death is not recommended at all on trash mobs like Mythic Dungeons in that situation. I would then take Auspicious Spirit or Shadow Crash, but again, take only Auspicious Spirits if you have at least about 18% crit, but else, if not, take Shadow Crash. For the next row, Lingering Insanity is really great if you can use your Void Form, and you actually can use the bonus after Void Form. If you're in a, let's say for example you're in a dungeon, Mythic Dungeon, you use your Void Form on the trash mobs dies, Void Form stops, and then you get the haste bonus after that. It's not really worth then. Then you should take Mindbender, because Mindbender will give you a pet that you can use that generates Insanity. Well, you normally also does that in your Shadow Fiend, but it only has 1 minute cooldown, and your Shadow Fiend had 3 minute cooldown. So Mindbender will help you a lot of more damage on your trash mobs, because it has like a burst when you need it, and you can use it just in all the trash mob pools. So on Mythic Dungeons with a lot of trash mobs and quick pools and all that, I would recommend Mindbender always. But Lingering Sanity in a raid group, take that always. So Lingering, raid groups, Mindbender, Mythic Dungeons, 100%. On the next row, aka last row, Legacy of the Void is like the most favorite one and the popular one to take. It makes your life easier as a Shadow Priest, I would say. Void Eruption cast time is reduced by 40 and may cast anytime your Insanity level is 60 or higher. Void Form increases the spell damage by additional 5. That isn't one of the new changes. But again, you don't really have to think about your rotation with Legacy of the Void. You just follow your normal rotation, and you can pretty quick go into, because if I don't take it, right now I need to have 90 Insanity to go into Void Form, and with this one here I only need 60. So Legacy of the Void makes your life easier, and you can go into Void Form faster and dealing more damage faster. But Dark Ascension is also great, as it puts you directly in Void Form without questioning. That means you get a 1 minute cooldown that puts you in Void Form with 1 click, deals a lot of damage as your Void Eruption would also do. It actually deals the same damage. So it directly puts you in Void Form, instant, boom, and when it's finished you will go out of Void Form, and then it has 1 minute cooldown, but now you have to get energy up to 90 Insanity for using your next Void Form. So you could say, if you need that burst on trash mobs in Mythic Dungeons, you need that instant burst now on every trash mob pool, Dark Ascension is great together with Mindbender and, for example, Shadow Crash here. Then you have a really nice burst with low cooldowns, both 1 minute and 20 seconds here. Then you have a really nice burst you can use on one time, but on a longer fight like boss fights, Lingering, Legacy of the Void and Suspicious Spirits, for example, would be a better choice to take. So let's say if you have the critical strike, I would take this for single target like raid and boss fights, and in a dungeon I would probably take Dark Ascension, Mindbender and Shadow Crash for AoE damage and a burst that you can control 100% when you need it. Yeah, and also if you want that extra burst on AoE trash mobs, you can also take Dark Void. So this is my recommendations for talents. I hope you appreciate them, and you probably maybe agree with me on some of them. But again, I'm just trying to learn you the basics and what I think is a pro Shadow Priest. But you can learn from my video and build up from that. So now it is the time to play the spec. Here we go. So here we have a trash pump. So what I would do normally on a fight, let's go to my single targets build. Here we go. So what I would do, I would not start a fight with precast. I will not start with adding a dot on the target. The first thing I would do in any situation is using Shadow Void, or what is called Mind Blast if you don't have the Shadow Void. So the first thing I do is using Shadow Void as a precast. So the tank is going to pull, and the first thing I do is casting a Shadow Void. After that, I would cast a Vampiric Touch and Shadow Pain. So now we have the two damage over abilities, or damage over time abilities on the target, and I have precasted a Shadow Void. So again, if we just wait for these to go off. So again, the tank is about to go into pull. Okay, precast Shadow Void, Vampiric Touch, and Shadow Pain. Now you can use again Shadow Void, and when you have enough Void Eruption, you want to use that on, well, when you have enough Insanity, you want to use that on your Void form. So before we go into the Void form, let's cover it one more time. Precast Shadow Void, Vampiric Touch, Shadow Pain, and now I can use Shadow Void again. And now my Void Eruption should be ready to go into Void form. And now it's all about trying to use my Shadow Void and Void Bolt as much as possible to get up my Insanity. And now when I don't have anything to do, use Mind Flay, Shadow Void, Void Blast, Mind Flay, Void Bolt, Shadow Void. So while you're inside Void form, you don't have to think about putting up your dots again, because your Void Blast, let me see if you can find it here, your Void Bolt will automatically put 3 new seconds to your Shadow Pain and Vampiric Touch. But when outside the Void form, you have to use your Vampiric Touch and Shadow Pain all the time to hold it refreshing. So try to see if you can refresh it every time. There's at least 2 to 3 seconds on it, so you can refresh it. So again, outside Void form, try to all the time hold them up with at least 2 seconds. Inside Void form, it's very important that you just spam Shadow Void and Void Bolt. And when both of them on cooldown, you just spam, what is it called? Mind Flay, when both of them is on cooldown. And if Void Bolt or Shadow Void is coming off cooldown, you just interrupt Mind Flay and use any of them again. So let's try to do my rotation here without stopping. So let's see here, Shadow Void, Vampiric Touch, Shadow Pain, Shadow Void, Void Eruption, Void Bolt, Mind Flay, Shadow Void, Void Bolt, Mind Flay. Now just waiting. Shadow Void, Mind Bolt, Mind Flay, Shadow Void, Mind Flay, and boom, outside again. Now fast refresh my dots before they go off, and follow my normal rotation. Shadow Void, Mind Flay, and back into our Shadow Void form. And then we all know, using our spells again, try keeping up. And now I actually saw that my Shadow Pain is going off, and I have to reapply them. That can actually happen. So just trying to use these 3 spells as much as possible to stay in. And again, the reason for using spamming Shadow Void and Void Bolt inside Void form is to stay. You have to try to stay as long as you can in Void form. The more haste you have, the longer time you can actually be inside Void form. So you have to find a balance between critical strike that increase your shadow damage from your apparitions, and haste, because the more haste you get, the longer time you can be inside void form. So that was the standard rotation without any cooldowns. Now let's add the cooldown. It's called Shadow Fiend. So what you're doing with Shadow Fiend is, again, you follow the normal rotation: Shadow Void Void, Vampiric Touch, Shadow Void Pain, and then Shadow Fiend. Shadow Void Void, Mind Flay, go into your Shadow Void form, and now while I'm following my normal rotation, my Shadow Void, my Mind Flay is actually helping me staying longer time in my form, because it generates insanity. So let's see how many stacks we can get on. To refresh. I came up on 19 stacks. That was 2 stacks better than before. And that is because of my Shadow Fiend. Or you have your Mindbender. Mindbender is actually giving you more insanity that will help you being longer time in it. But Lingering Insanity is giving you more damage boost after Void form. So, as you saw, I used Shadow Void Void, Vampiric Touch, Shadow Void Pain, and then I used my Shadow Fiend. I could actually also wait with using Shadow Fiend after I've entered my Void form. That would maybe have been the best solution, but that's up to you if you want to start the Insanity Rush there, or you want to start it after. For me, it doesn't really matter if I'm starting it before or after. As long you just use Shadow Void Void, Shadow Void Void, Vampiric Touch, and Shadow Void Pain before casting Shadow Fiend. You don't want to start a fight with Shadow Fiend. So that was the standard basic rotations. So some small gameplay tips. If you're close to dying, you can use Dispersion. That will decrease all your damage taken by 75, and it's pretty cool. Also, Void form Insanity Drain is temporarily reduced by 100, so that means if you're inside Void form and you use it, you don't have to think about losing Insanity. It will be paused and you will not decrease in it. You can also shield yourself, and you also have Vampiric Embrace that heals you for all your single targets shadow damage. So if I use it, all the damage I deal directly is healing myself, as you can see here. So it's kind of it's helping, causing you to heal a nearby ally for 85 of your single target. So it will either heal you or a nearby ally. So it's pretty cool. You also have your self heal called Shadow Mend if you really need some healing. You also have, if you're talented, Physical, you stun. So you can stun your target. So if you're in a dungeon, he's casting a shield or any big spell, you can stun. And you have the silence, so you can silence your enemy if they're beginning to cast some kind of a big spell. You also have, in worst case scenarios, a Physics Scream, so you can actually fear. With this set, you actually have 3 crowd controls. You have silence, stun, and fear. I mean, I don't think any other classes in the game have 3 crowd controls that works so well in a mythic dungeon. Basically, you actually have 4, because you also have mind control, but it doesn't work on all enemies. It's only on, I only think it's Humanoid actually, Humanoid and Beast, I mean. But it says does not work versus Demonic, Mechanic, Undeads. So I think it's Beast, Elementals, and Humanoid it works on. You also have Master Spell if needed, and you can remove magics from your from your enemies. So if they cast a shield on themselves, you can remove it, or you can remove all disease from you and your friendly targets. Keep in mind you also have the buff back, so you have to buff your team when you start, so you all get 10% health. It's pretty cool. And if you get aggro, you can use Fade, and all your threat will be removed. And if one of your friend is standing in fire and he doesn't really move, you can use the one called Leap and Fade, and it will drag him out of the fire. Yeah. So, a little thing. I have only talked about the rotation for single target. Let's just correctly look on how the rotation would be if it's on multiple targets. So if we're talking 1 to 3 targets, you should still do the same with precasting Shadow Word Void, but then you want to use Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word on them all. So on the 3 targets, dot them up and follow your normal rotation. Don't really do anything special from your normal rotation when it's 1 to 2 targets. When they reach number 3 target, you should actually replace Mind Flay with Mind Seer, because Mind Seer deals 4000 damage, Mind Flay deals 8000 damage. That means 2 targets, it doesn't matter if you use Mind Flay or use Mind Seer. But when it gets over 3, so 3 and over, Mind Seer is now beginning to deal more damage, because now it deals 4000 to all 3 targets, and that is the same as 1.5 Mind Flay. So 1 to 3 targets use the same rotation, except when you go into 3 plus, replace Mind Flay with Mind Seer. That is the only difference. So 3 to 5 targets, I would say use your normal rotation and try to buff up, well, debuff the target you can, and use your normal rotation. But when it's more than 5 enemies, so 5 to 10, then you should only use Mind Seer and your normal rotation with your Void form. So it will be going into Void form, using your instant card, your Void Bolt and your Void Set, and then Mind Seer. If it's more than 5 targets, you will not waste time on using Vampiric Touch or Shadow Word Pain. But that's why you can get talents like Dark Void that will give them all Shadow Word Pain, and you have Shadow Crash that will deal damage to them all. So that's how you can do it. But 1 to 3 targets is pretty much the same. Okay, you could say 1 to 2 targets is exactly the same rotation. When it's get up to 3 targets, you replace Mind Flay with Mind Seer, and when it's over 3 targets, you're beginning to want to use more Mind Seer and try to maybe not debuff them all, because you have to do more direct damage on so many targets. And when it's over 5 targets, you don't debuff, you simply spam Mind Seer, and also of course Shadow Word Void together with what is it called, you're going into your Void form. So Void form, spam with Mind Seer. Yeah. So that was the guide. Changes, stats, Azerite, talents, rotation. Everything we need for a perfect guide. So I hope you enjoyed this little guide. With all this, you should now be pretty ready to play Shadow Priest. You know the changes, stats, Azerite, talents, rotation. And of course, you probably disagree with something in my talents, you maybe disagree with something in my rotation, but I mean that's what we all well, makes us different. So I'm just trying to show you what I prefer and what I like and what I have, you could say, studied that is the best. So yeah, so thank you guys for watching. I would appreciate a like if you liked the video. Leave down a comment if you have any questions about the spec or other things you would say that is better to take. Well, leave down a comment. I'm open-minded for any changes, and I can only answer in the comments and maybe agree with you or disagree with you. So I would like to hear feedback from you all. So again, remember I also made guides for other classes, and well, I would like to have a comment from you. Which class would you like to see next time? Which class and spec, which guide would you see in the next video? So thank you guys for watching, really appreciate your support and hope you enjoyed this little guide. Thank you so much for watching, and have an awesome night and stay awesome.